Joe was a mailman. He went on his bike delivering mail into a neighborhood. One day he entered at the Johnson's place because he had a package that he needed to sign. When he entered the place, he noticed that the kitchen was half empty. But he thought, well, it's none of my business. Maybe they're moving, maybe they're renovating the kitchen, so he didn't bother with it. A week later, he had to deliver another package at the place. Then he noticed that half of the furniture was gone. So he asked the wife of Mr. Johnson, Mrs. Johnson, are you moving? And she said, moving? What are you talking about? Well, Joe said, I noticed that some furniture is gone. And the wife thought, mailman, you've been tired lately, there's nothing gone here, things are just the same. Now, this was a big red flag. Joe noticed that something very wrong was going on. Because 3 weeks ago, when he passed by on the bicycle and he looked inside the home, because the curtains were open, he could see their living room was filled with furniture, filled with decorations. And one time he passed by just to put something in the mailbox, and he also could see till the kitchen, and the kitchen was also quite decorated. The 2 times he came to deliver a package, he noticed that things were missing, things were gone, but the people in the house obviously didn't notice it. Or the wife was lying. He didn't really know what's going on, but he didn't got the feeling that the wife was lying. He sensed that the wife was genuinely telling him that nothing changed. So when he noticed that the wife didn't even notice things were missing from the place, he realized, hold on a minute, what's going on here? Then, a few days afterwards, he had to deliver another package. And this time, Joe became suspicious. Then Joe asked his employer to figure out who sent the package. His employer said, Joe, you know you're not allowed to do that due to privacy laws. Then Joe told the employer, boss, I went to the house of that family twice. Things are missing in their house, and the wife doesn't even notice it. Ever since I had to deliver packages over there, which only happened twice, I noticed things are missing. I think that there may be some criminal organization behind this, sending packages to them as a distraction. And the employer told them, Joe, you watch too much crime scene investigation, you watch too much documentaries, there's something going on, please just do your work. Joe, who didn't want any arguments with his boss, he delivered the package. The 3rd time he came, he noticed that things were placed in the house. And he was just so confounded that people just didn't notice that something was going on with their house. Now, several days later, the police called Joe, asked him to come to the police station. He came. It was concerning burglaries. The police told him, Joe, we called you to come because you delivered packages to the Johnsons past weeks, correct? And Joe said, yeah, that's correct. And the police also told him, Joe, have you noticed anything strange about the house when you were there? Joe said, well, nothing that may be relevant to this. The police also told him, just tell us, it may be relevant. Then Joe told them how he noticed things were missing out of the house and people just weren't aware of it. And then the police officer told him, Joe, this was a criminal operation that was going on. There were a group of criminals that sent packages pretending to be a relative of one of those people. They have relatives in Australia whom they haven't had contact with for a while. And on the name of those relatives, criminals sent packages to that family. They even sent letters, so-called letters, in name of those relatives. Meanwhile, in the nights, criminals would come, the burglars would come and would take away small things out of the house. And even replace some things just to confuse the people. And the family wasn't aware they were being confused by things being replaced and things taken away. Their minds went to the things being replaced, but after a while they got used to things being replaced like that, so they didn't notice things went missing. So the packages they sent to those relatives was meant as a distraction. So after that they looted almost half of their property, they came one night and snatched everything else away. And even then, the family was not aware that their house had been emptied. It's when neighbors noticed it that they freaked out. And they were so shocked, they had to be taken to a mental institution, all of them, because their minds broke down. They couldn't figure out how they could have been robbed systematically like that, and they weren't even aware of it. Joe, I'm telling you, don't deliver any mail to that neighborhood anymore. And Joe asked, why? The police officer told them, look, that family has been robbed. Not only they, multiple households have been robbed in a similar way. The only connection you have to all of this is that you are the mailman. And you delivered letters or sometimes packages to those people. With the Johnson family, you noticed that something was going on. With the others, you didn't. So the people there want to find out what happened. They're paranoid now. And in this paranoia, they will look for a perpetrator. And likely, they will think you have something to do with it. You were drawn into this operation without you being aware of it. Now, you're not a criminal. You intended no harm. But the criminals used you without you being aware to distract those people. But those people that have been targeted, who have been robbed, they don't care whether you were used unaware of or not. They will blame you, and they'll come to take out the rage on you for your own safety and for the safety of the public order. I'm telling you, don't deliver any mail anymore to this neighborhood. I already called your boss and explained everything. You won't receive any assignment anymore to deliver any mail over here. And Joe listened. Now, in this parable, Joe was the only one being alert. He couldn't really figure out what was going on, but he realized something didn't add up. But Joe could not think ever that criminals would use him to loot those people. So actually, let me say like this. If he would have known that criminals intended to use him to loot those people, he wouldn't have delivered any mail over there. He would have found some ways to get out of it. But because the criminals were smooth criminals, they thought it like this. Joe is a mailman. He comes here often. So we're going to use him to bring packages to those people so people are distracted. So did Joe do anything wrong? No, Joe was just being used. And that's how Satan uses people in his operations. That's how he often does it. However, I'm not going to talk about Satan here. I don't want to give this guy, this faggot, too much attention. Look, let me say this. Unclean spirits, including their master, are counterfeiters. Just like burglars, they copycat the original. And what I just explained about a house being emptied systematically and people not being aware of it, I call it the empty house effect. And I hope you get where this parable is going. Let's say now, instead of burglars, you have a believer. And the believer walks by faith, and the believer decrees health, wealth, and abundance on his own behalf. The believer also has dreams to have his own business, have his own enterprise, and all of that. And the believer walks in faith, and he accomplishes things. Now, let's say now, instead of a mailman, you have a commoner. And that commoner, well, he gets to be around the believer, And the commoner notices that the believer is making progress. The believer owns his own website. The believer had contacts in Dubai. The believer just makes progress like that. Here's the thing. After a while, that commoner is going to notice, hold on a minute. How come this guy has so much progress? Okay, so he's going to talk about it. And he talks about it. People are also going to think, huh? How can this guy have so much progress? He didn't even finish Harvard University in economics, but yet already he has so much going on. So people are going to talk about it, discuss it. But here's the thing, okay? This believer is like a mustard seed. He's growing and growing wildly. After a while, on the radio, they hear songs. And people get used to those songs. So locally, everyone knows a certain song. Some people can't stand the song, but the song is still on the radio. They're upset by it. And what do they find out? That song was written by that believer. And he sold that song to a record label that uses it now. And he got paid large sums of money for it. That's another influence he had. Then they open a newspaper and see that there's a column in a newspaper written by that believer. So little by little, the believers had such a big impact that, let me say like this. Just like a little bit of yeast in a leaven, it leavened the whole bread, the same way the believer begins to take over the whole environment. And here's the thing. The people around were not even aware the believer was taking over the whole environment. It's only one day when the believer has gone way far that they began to notice something was up. And when their eyes opened, they were quite shocked. Their whole so-called private lives have been overturned. It's been turned upside down. That believer had social contacts everywhere. He expanded himself throughout the community. So now, the common folks realize we can't get rid of this guy. He had too much influence already. If we choose to resist him now, it will be at our own expense. He will be making us vulnerable. And while we're vulnerable, we become vulnerable to predators also. Now, what has happened now? The believer caused an empty house effect on the environment. The believer didn't come and intentionally said, I'm going to take over. I'm going to expand the kingdom of God. No. The believer, inspired by smooth criminals, just did his thing. He operated in the dark. Nobody knew what he was doing. Nobody even cared nor was interested in what he was doing. He kept going and going and going. Every day he was active. Some people realized that he was kind of present in their own houses without him being there. That was going on. Some people began to resist the influence of this believer, but there were energetic repercussions on them. So there were actions taken against them in their own houses where they were, in their so-called private lives, by that believer, and that believer wasn't even there physically. That believer was somewhere on the job, in the office, while at the same time things were shifting in the houses of those people. So this effect, when people realize, oh dear, we can't resist this guy. This guy can even deal with us in our own houses without being here. So we can't kick him out of our house. We can't use a gun on him. They realize this believer is so powerful. What happened? Many began to avoid the believer completely. Some people even moved out of the community. And the people who were moved were wicked people. So the wicked had to flee for the righteous. The empty house effect, I've talked about it before. Now, criminals have the counterfeit. They distract you, and little by little they take things away, and then they take everything away, and you're not even aware of it. Believers have the original. We, man, we can empty people's houses without laying a finger physically on their house, without getting even close to their houses. We can cause folks to hand over their goods without using a gun. Believers can go very far. Why? They walk in the original. They walk in the original power. Here's the thing. Demons know what you are and who you are as a believer. They know what you're capable of. They do. Demons know far better than you what you're capable of. And here's the thing. Some common people are going to know this. You have power. They're going to sense this empty house effect happening to them. And they can't figure out what's going on. So they're going to associate that fright with you. And they're going to block you, turn away from you, want nothing to do with you. It will happen. It happens to me. And I wasn't even focused on those people. After it was just a side effect of me walking by faith that affected them. That's why you can't walk by faith and not encountering enemies. You can't walk by faith and not encountering resistance. If someone claims to walk by faith, yet everything is smooth and easy with them, they're lying. Or they're deceived. Anyway, something is wrong. You can't walk in the power and not have this empty house effect on those around you that don't get along with the power. You get what I'm saying here? I understand very well why certain people suddenly turned on me. Probably I had an effect on them I wasn't even aware of. Because often I have an impact on people I'm not even aware of it. Often people, I have this happening to me. The people say they sense power with me. And I think, what power? There were days, man, I felt very bad. There were days I was under psychic attack. And it affected my sleep pattern, all of that. And I was thinking, man, when is this going to stop? And those same days, I encountered people that told me they sense power with me. And I was thinking, what power? Me personally, I was thinking to myself, what are those people talking about? If they knew what I was going through now, and they're talking about power, come on. I understand it now. Know who you are so that you can use your abilities that Christ entrusts onto you in a very effective manner. And here's the thing, you are in agreement with Christ. So you are dedicated to do the good. You're dedicated to reality. Just understand that common people in general are not dedicated to reality. So they, being in irreality, will turn on you walking in reality. Because reality is not their friend. Anyway, agree with Christ and be at peace.